I am Nicolas Forero. I help alternative education schools reach the families their mission was built for. I want to tell you about a school that I've been working with for close to 12 months now. When I started, they were spending money on ads and losing money on every single dollar. Their costs to enroll a single family was over $9,000. They had tried multiple agencies, they had tried running ads themselves, they had redesigned their website, they had launched a new funnel, and none of it seemed to work. When I look at what was going on, the reason was actually pretty obvious. They were trying to fix everything at once. New ads, and a new website, and better emails, and a social media strategy, and a new landing page. All at the same time, which meant nothing was getting fixed properly. About 12 months later, that same school cost per enrolled family is under $2,000. More than 80% in terms of reduction. During their best quarter, they brought in over $300,000 in signed contracts on less than $10,000 in ad spend, a return of more than 30 to 1. And here's what might surprise you the most, and that is that we did not do more marketing, we did not add more channels, and we did not hire more people. What we did was one thing at a time, the right thing in the right order. Today, I want to explain exactly how that works, because if you're running an alternative school and you feel like you've tried everything and nothing seems to move the needle, you probably haven't tried everything. You've probably tried a lot of the wrong things at once. So let me start with why most schools stay stuck. And this is what I see over and over again. A school founder or the head of school is sitting in a meeting and they say, we need more families. And then everyone starts listing ideas. We should run more ads, we should post more on social media, we should record our sessions, we should redesign our website, we should send more email, we should go to more school fairs, and we should even open a new school. And because the team is smart and motivated, they try to do all of it. They spread their budget across 5 channels, maybe they start working on 10 different initiatives. And at the end of the semester, enrollment is usually flat, maybe up a little, maybe down a little bit, but nothing dramatically changed. The conclusion usually is something along the lines of, marketing doesn't work for our school, or our families are different, or they don't respond to ads, or we are that one school in the world where word of mouth is the only thing that can grow it. And I can tell you that none of that is true. What actually usually happens is that you try to fix 6 things at once and fix 0. Because the truth about enrollment, the thing that changed everything about how I approach this work, is that at any given moment, your school doesn't have 6 enrollment problems. It has one binding constraint. One specific stage in the journey from I've never heard from this school to I'm writing a tuition check where the biggest leak exists. One place where families are disappearing. And until you find that one place and fix it, nothing else matters. You could have the best ads in the world, but if your form is pushing families away after they click, those ads will produce nothing. You could have also the most beautiful website ever built, but if nobody's finding it, it does nothing. When I started working with this school, the first thing I did was map the entire enrollment system. Not just the ads, everything. How families found the school, what happens when they arrive on the website, what they see, what they filled out, what happens after they fill it out, who calls them, when, what gets said on the call, what happens after that call. I mapped every single stage with real numbers. And when I did, the binding constraint was immediately obvious. It was the ads. Not that they were running ads, but that the targeting was wrong, the messaging was wrong, and the creative was also wrong. They were spending money reaching the wrong families with the wrong message, and every dollar that they spent was producing a loss. What did we do? We went ahead and fixed that. We rebuilt the targeting, rewrote the messaging, we got new creative, and the cost to enroll a family dropped by more than half in the first few months. But here's what happened next, and this is the part that most people don't expect. The moment the ads started working, a new problem appeared. Families, they were clicking on the ads, they were arriving on the landing page, they were filling out the form, and then they disappeared. The funnel was now leaking, and before we couldn't see this leak because there wasn't enough traffic to rebuild it. Now we have traffic, and the leak was obvious, so the constraint shifted. And it turns out that the form, we found out that it was too long. The next step was too confusing, so we rebuilt the funnel. And what happened next was that conversion improved dramatically. And then, you guessed it, the constraint shifted again. Now the funnel was working, families were getting through, but there weren't enough of them. So the constraint was now volume, not conversion, not cost, pure volume. So what did we do? We scaled ad spend. We launched a content funnel that brought in hundreds of new leads per month through organic channels. And in that next quarter, the school signed over $250,000 in new contracts on less than $10,000 in ad spend. Over 30 to 1 in terms of return. So we had 3 constraints, 3 fixes, and each one revealed the next. And if we had tried to fix all 3 at the beginning, if we had scale ads and rebuild the funnel and fix the messaging all at the same time, nothing would have worked. Because you cannot fix a funnel that has no traffic, and you cannot scale traffic into a broken funnel. The order matters, and the sequence matters. Finding which one is binding right now is the entire game of growing an alternative education school. This is actually what I do. I call it the right families method. I diagnose which constraint is binding your enrollment right now, and I fix it. If you're running an alternative school, Montessori, Waldorf, classical, or micro school, whatever your model may be, you're between $500,000 and $2 million in revenue and you feel stuck, the link in the description is where you start. Let me keep going because the story doesn't end with these 3 constraints. We saw these results and we thought, let's do more of that. So we scaled the ad spend and way up. And for 2 months, cost per enrollment spike came from being at over 30 for every single dollar that we put in to almost breaking even. The constraint was no longer volume, now it was seasonality. Close rates had dropped from over 30% in the summer to under 10% in the dead months. Families were still clicking, still filling out the forms, still booking calls, but they weren't enrolling because the decision cycle for families follows a seasonal pattern. No amount of ad spend could override that within this particular school. So we had to recognize that this is not fixable by marketing. I just cannot go ahead and sell harder during a season where families are not buying. The only move, at least within this company, was to adjust. So we cut ad spend to maintenance mode and shifted to pipeline nurturing. We started building relationships now so that we can close them later once the season changed. And then the constraint shifted again. We discovered that about 3 out of 4 families who filled out the inquiry form never got on a call. 3 out of 4 interested in families vanished between I'm interested and let's talk because the form was too complex. So we went ahead and we shifted the form and we started getting more people who not only say that they were interested in joining a call with us to actually going ahead and showing up to the call. So all sorts of constraints within the course of a little bit less than 12 months. Ads, funnel, volume, seasonality, close rate, mid-funnel conversion. Now we're working on retention. And every single one was invisible until the one before it was fixed. If this school had hired an agency that only does ads, they would have fixed constraint number 1 and then watch the results stall. If they had hired a website design firm, they might have fixed constraint number 3 or 4. But they would never have found the others. The right families method doesn't stop. It's not a one-time fix. It's a system that keeps evolving because the constraints keeps shifting. They shift just as the way in which the schools grow. And let me tell you what makes this different from just doing marketing. Because 3 things separate this from every other enrollment approach that I've seen. The first one is that it kills discipline. Most schools and most agencies, honestly, they struggle to stop doing things. They keep running the ads that are not working because they spend time making them. They keep sending the emails that nobody opens because it's on their calendar. And they keep attending the school fair because they have always attended it. The right families method kills rules. If an ad isn't hitting its cost target within 2 weeks, I'm not just gonna give them another week, it just dies. I recently uploaded a video in which I shared a story about how I tested a different batch of different ad messages for a given school. And we killed half of them over the course of 2 weeks so that I can reallocate the budget from those ads into the ones that were working. This requires a kind of discipline that most school teams don't naturally have because a lot of educators are optimistic by nature. They want to give things a chance. But in enrollment marketing, giving a bad ad more time doesn't make it better. It trains the algorithm to find you more of the wrong families. The second reason why the right families method works is that you account for seasonal awareness. I've watched schools burn tens of thousands of dollars in December in advertisement because someone told them that you should always be marketing. That's true, but there's a difference between marketing and spending. Your close rate might triple between a dead month and a peak month. They could be the same leads, the same school, the same admissions team, but a different season. And if you're spending the same amount in December as you're in May, you're burning money. The right families method adjusts spend to seasonality. It builds a pipeline during that month and closes them during peak months. The third reason why the right families method might be interesting to you is that retention is treated as acquisition. And that is because most schools treat enrollment and retention as completely separate conversations. Enrollment, it's marketing job, and retention is the academic team's job. But mathematically, they're the same thing. If your school enrolls 20 new families and loses 12 existing ones, you didn't grow by 20, you grew by 8. And those 12 families you lost, it cost you nothing to keep. Every family retained is equivalent of acquiring a new one at 0 cost. I've been in recent contact with a school who might start working with me, and I found out that they had over 50% first year churn, meaning that if at the start of the year they had 100 students, by next year 50 of them would just leave. So let me connect all of this to what it means for you. You do not have a marketing problem. You have a constraint problem. If you've been running ads and they're not producing enrollments, the constraint might not be the ads. It might be what happens after the ad. The form, the follow-up, the call, the seasonal timing. If you've been posting on social media and nothing seems to convert, the constraint might not be the content. It might be that there's no bridge between seeing your content and having a conversation with your school. If you've been doing school fairs and open houses and enrollment is still flat, the constraint might not be awareness. It might be that families who already know about you cannot tell from the outside whether you are for their child. And here's the hardest one. If you feel like enrollment is fine, but growth is stalled, the constraint might not be acquisition at all. It might be retention. You might be losing families at the same rate you're gaining them and never measuring it. The right families for your school are out there. They're looking, they're actively searching for an alternative to what they have. But they generally cannot tell from the outside whether your school is right for their child. Not because your school isn't great, but because the system that connects them to you is broken at one specific point. Find that point, fix it, and then fix the next one. That's how schools grow. Not by doing more, but by doing the right thing in the right order. And let me give you the proof from this one school across close to 12 months. The cost per enrolled family went from close to $10,000 to under $2,000. At return, we went from losing money on every dollar that we spent to over 30 times the return over peak season. Here's the one thing that matters most. This school went from scrambling every single semester to filling seats. They left away the emergency campaigns and the discounts and the begging for referrals to having a system that predictably produces enrolled families, month after month, with data telling them exactly what's working and exactly what needs attention next. That is what an actual system does. I want to address the name for a second. The right families method, not the more families method, not the fill every seat method, the right families method. Because here's what happens when schools get desperate about enrollment. They start accepting families who are in a fit. They discount tuition, they lower the bar, they take the family who's looking for the cheapest option, or the family who doesn't actually believe in the model, or maybe the family who's going to leave after one semester because they never understood what they were signing up for. And those families, they cost way more than what they pay. They create problems for teachers, they leave bad reviews, they take up a seat that a mission-aligned family could have filled. And when they churn, and they will, you're back to square one. But now you've wasted money, energy, and goodwill it took to serve them. The right families are families who already understand what your school is. They've seen the proof, they've connected emotionally. They know that this is different from their current situation and that they want that difference for their child. When those families enroll, they stay. They refer others, they become ambassadors. The method isn't just about getting more families through the door, it's about building a system where the families who find you are the ones who were meant to be there. That's how a school grows without losing itself. Here's what you can do right now. One exercise this week: map your enrollment season. Not in your head, but on a piece of paper or a whiteboard or a spreadsheet. Write down every single stage. Awareness, how many people see that your school exists every month. Interest, how many take an action, download something, fill out something. Conversation, how many get on a call with someone at your school. And in terms of enrollment, how many actually sign. I'll put a number next to each stage, even if it's an estimate, a rough. Where's the largest percentage of family disappearing? And that's almost certainly gonna point you into the binding constraint. For example, if you have 1,000 people see your school, but only 10 take action, maybe your constraint is at the awareness to interest stage. Your message just isn't landing. If you have 100 interested families, but only 5 conversations, your constraint might be within the middle of the funnel. Something between I'm interested and let's talk is pushing people away. If you have 30 conversations, but only 2 enrollments, maybe you're not as good at closing as you might think you are. Now, if you map your system and you find the drop and you think, I know where it's broken, but I don't know how to fix it for my school, that is the exact situation the Right Families method was built for. I work with alternative education schools, Montessori, Waldorf, classical, micro school, project-based, whatever your model might be. And if you're between $500,000 to $2 million in tuition revenue, and you're ready to stop guessing and start diagnosing, the link in the description is where you begin. The Right Families method. Link is in the description. I'll see you in the next video.